was March 12th, 1938, and I was in 7th grade. It was a Thursday night. The radio gave some speeches by the leader of our country, Dr. Schuschnigg. And he said, we are no longer Austria, the Germans have taken over. And my parents, they told me to pack a small suitcase. All I was allowed was one dress, my favorite book, and anything else I would need, my jacket and so on. We spent most of the night listening to the radio. But my parents sent me to bed. They got me up at 5 o'clock and said, we have to leave and we're going on a ski vacation. So I put on my ski clothes and we got into the family car and my father drove us to the nearest border, which was Czechoslovakia. By that time it was 7 in the morning and the border guards wouldn't let us through. They said, no Jewish refugees are allowed to cross the border. So we returned back into Vienna. Now, the next memory is very, very clear to me because it was very upsetting. My father parked on the side street and said to my mother and me, wait, I have to go to the office and get some money and some papers. And we waited and we waited. And 2 blocks away on the Heldenplatz, there were mobs chanting Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil in a very scary way. They were welcoming Hitler, who was about to take over our country. The wait seemed just interminable. The Nazis had already joined the German SS, which were in dark brown uniforms. They were the ones who arrested people. And they had come to my father's office 5 minutes before he arrived. And he was told, get out quickly because the SS has already been here to arrest you. He appeared, got back in the car. My father said, I have an idea. We're going to try and take the train. So he drove us to the train station. There were masses of people. My father abandoned the car and had us jump into the next train that was about to leave. We didn't know where it was going, but luckily it was headed for Switzerland. But later on we heard that this was the last train where people were not arrested if they had a J on their passport or if they had the wrong visa. But this was so early in the game that when we finally got to the Swiss border, in a little village called Feldkirchen. My parents were very worried. Would we get out of the country or not? Would Switzerland let us in? Well, the young Nazi who opened the compartment door was evidently very inexperienced. He came in, raised his arm, and yelled Heil Hitler, whereupon we yelled Heil Hitler. He took our passports away. This was very scary because if you lose your passports, you're simply without any means of protection. Finally, he returned, gave us back our passports, and started to ask questions. Where are you going? We're going on a ski holiday. My father told him we were in ski clothes, so I guess he believed that. Then he went through my mother's handbag. What he didn't know was that she had a secret compartment in her bag in which she was hiding a few pieces of jewelry. So he shut the handbag, gave it back to us, and disappeared. Again, we sat and waited, and the train slowly started and moved into Switzerland. For the moment, we were safe. In Zurich, we lived in a small hotel while my father tried to get the proper papers to get into England. This was the only country which did not require an official visa or entry permit. But on April 10th, which was a couple of weeks away, this would also change. And from then on, they wouldn't let anyone in without the proper visa, which of course we didn't have and had no way of getting. So while my father was busy doing that, my mother and I just walked around Zurich and the time passed. Finally, we were told the Swiss authorities were going to send us back. And my father said to them, but that means a certain death for all of us. And he said, well, Switzerland doesn't care about that. My uncle arrived with my aunt and my 2 little cousins. I don't remember how they got out, but here they were in Switzerland. So my father and his brother decided the only way to get to England was through France. But France would not permit anyone to travel through the country, even if they promised not to stay there. So they decided to hire a plane and to fly over France and over the Channel into London. So that's what we did. We climbed into a little plane which was called a Douglas. Now, 80 years later, these Douglas airplanes are still flying. You may know them by the name of DC-3. Anyway, the plane with our family on board flew over France, over the Channel, and landed at Croydon Airport in London. It was a small airport, and the people who rushed around and greeted us had no idea who we were. We did not give a radio signal. We just arrived. And the next day, the London Express had a front page article upon this family just dropping out of the sky. So we stayed in England and we were safe. And gradually we did our best to bring over other people who were in danger of being arrested and sent to a concentration camp. So we managed to bring over my grandmother and several relatives. I was sent to an English boarding school. I didn't know a word of English, and I went around with a little dictionary. So I learned English pretty fast. I was there for one term and then returned to London, and my father had finally gotten an entry visa to the United States. So at the end of August, we got into a big ship. In those days, there were no planes flying across the Atlantic. So we were on a ship. Finally, we were out of Europe. This was 1938, a year before the war started. And luckily, the German U-boats were not yet operating. So we were not torpedoed like a lot of people who were on ships that traveled after 1939. We arrived in New York City, and my father blessed this wonderful country, the United States, which had taken us, where we were free and not in any danger, and we started our life in the United States.